Welcome to Slice of Life, the weekly interview program that presents interesting guests from all walks of life. And now, here's your host, Kim Scharnberg, to introduce this week's guest.
Our guest today is Jack Prewitt. He's a recording engineer and owner of 16-track studio here in Brighton, and it's called Blue Planet Enterprises. Jack, I guess we need to know a little bit about your background in recording. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure, be glad to, Kim. I've been interested in recording for most of my life. I think I remember when my dad first brought home a wire recorder. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those. Yeah. But that was my first introduction to any kind of recording. And then he later bought an old mono Wallensack, the big heavy metal monster things that all the schools used to have. And I used to record myself and friends playing around, usually talking and things like that. And throughout high school, I used that for recording music and even for playing music a little bit. And when I got out of high school, after my first year in college, I bought a stereo recorder, an old Magnacord 1024. I don't know if you know what those are. And I used that for more musical recording.
Just for yourself or for friends?
I'd record friends also.
Right.
Yeah, we do harmonies, and I'd record on one track and then bounce that track onto the other track, and in addition, add something to it.
Just like the Beach Boys, right?
Right, that's right. So that was really my first creative use of recording for music, and I think that was the beginning of my addiction. And a few years after that, I went to MCC and rolled in the audiovisual technology program, and decided that I wanted to get a 4-channel machine. And so I went to Maynard Sound World and talked to those folks about buying one, and it's too expensive for me.
Right.
I couldn't afford it, so I came back to the school frustrated and told my instructor, Vince, who I believe is still here now, and he suggested that I look into mail order. So he showed me some of the mail order prices, and the prices were very low, very, very low. And I took those prices back to Maynard's, and the manager, Dick Hellman, looked at me and he says, I can't beat these prices. So look, come to work for me, and you can buy them at our cost,
right.
which was even lower.
So that's many years later, you started acquiring
that's right.
more and more tracks.
That's right.
You started out with a 4-track, though?
Started out with a 4-track, and a year later, I bought an 8-track. And I produced my first 2 album recordings on that format, the 8-track. In fact, we have here, we'll be able to show you those first 2 albums that I recorded.
And right now you have the 16-track, and
that's right.
It's a 16-track Tascam?
Tascam, and it's a 1-inch format.
1-inch format, rather than the 2-inch format.
That's right.
Most are familiar with.
That's right.
Okay, I guess we'd like to talk a little bit about some of the albums that you've engineered. You've gotten to work with a lot of creative people here in Rochester.
Wonderful, yeah, it's been a great experience.
And a lot of people out of Rochester, I'm sure, too.
Yeah.
And so I guess the first album we'd like to talk about is one by the Fred Lewis Orchestra. And just tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. That recording was done on 8-track, and it was done about 5 years ago. And part of it was recorded at Fred's apartment. Some of it was recorded at PCI Recording Studios, and some of it was recorded at my recording studio on Westfall Road.
And those all
a
used
real mixture.
Those all used 8-track?
Well, actually, the stuff done at PCI was done on 6-track, and 16-track.
16-track, right.
And we dubbed it onto the 8-track and completed it on the 8-track.
Right. And you did all the. Well, was it fun working with Fred and all the guys? Because I know there's a lot of talented people that you got to work with.
Phenomenally talented and fascinatingly eccentric in many ways too.
Well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, there's another album I think you want to talk about.
That's right.
I'm not familiar with this artist, so maybe you could tell me a little bit about the artist as well as the album project.
Okay. Justin Tyler is the artist, and this was his first album project, and we did that about, I'd say 4 years ago. Sometime after the Fred Lewis Orchestra album. And that was also done on 8-track. And that was an exciting project because they actually put the tunes together at the studio. The musicians essentially rehearsed them right in the studio. And so I was able to watch the the creative process unfold and the contributions of all the different musicians.
Do you ever have much of a say in the creative process? I mean, if you see something start to go haywire, do you step in and say, you know, well, guys, what I'd say is that it should do this? So that's good.
A lot. In fact, being a musical person and being involved in writing music, I'm constantly making suggestions that are often used.
Right.
And so that's a neat feeling.
Right. And so you do all different kinds of record production, 45s as well as live tapes. Do you do many live tapes at all?
I have done some. I've done some live jazz tapes right in a club, done some live rock remote type recordings at different places, classical remotes, a little bit of everything.
That sounds fun. One interesting thing I heard about your recording studio is that a lot of times you're called on for criminal court cases to, they give you tapes and you
enhance them.
Enhance them, yeah. Explain this to me.
Okay. Well, basically, this happened seemingly by accident. One of the assistant district attorneys from Monroe County came to Maynard Sound World, where I was working, and asked if there was any way to clean up a surveillance tape that the police had recorded that he was going to use as evidence in a court case. This was a case involving arson, where someone had attempted to burn down a building for profit. And this was a recording of a conversation between a police decoy and a professional arsonist. And it was very noisy. It was hard to hear the voices. So this assistant DA asked me what I could do about it. And I said, I don't know, but I'll see what I can do. And I fiddled with a 15-band EQ, and I worked with it for about half an hour. And I said, is that better? And he said, yes. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you bring the original recording to my studio, where I have much more sophisticated equipment, and I'll really do a job on it. And that was the start of a snowballing of a whole new area in work for me.
So you've been able to do quite a bit of that type of, you feel fairly responsible for helping put some criminals behind bars that might not actually be there if the tapes couldn't be deciphered, or?
I guess, you know, the legal system is such that people often get off for so many different reasons. And so I'd say probably half the cases have either ended in dismissal or not guilty verdicts or all kinds of things. So I think there's only been one or two cases where they've gone to prison. In those cases, there were murder involved. In fact, both of those cases there were murder involved.
And I'm sure you have to be somewhat secret when you're working on the case, as well as deciphering the tapes.
Not that much, because by the time the tapes get to me, it's no longer a secret. It's already been in the papers. It's already been going through a lengthy court process. It's not like the police make a recording immediately and they come to me, so try and get it fixed up. So
fearing for your life when you're doing these.
I was scared at first.
Really?
I was afraid, you know, I might get into a mafia situation and I would receive threats that if I didn't, you know, keep my hands off these tapes, that something would happen. But actually, my response from the response from the defendants and the defense attorneys has been incredibly warm and friendly. I have never felt uncomfortable with them. In fact, my most recent job was for a defense attorney, enhancing tapes for the case of the defense.
Really?
Yeah.
So you'd sort of work the other way around this time.
I played tapes for both sides.
So you're responsible for actually going and setting up the tapes and things at the court trials?
That's right. And I provide sound systems for everyone in the courtroom, every jurist and the judge. And
like headphones? Or?
Exactly. Everyone has headphones, so that way they can hear just the conversation and no acoustical interferences from the room. Yeah.
Sure. Well, that's very exciting. What other kinds of things are you involved in as far as the recording business? Because I know you have it over at a house in Brighton, so that's a nice, relaxed atmosphere rather than an industrial situation where you have people running through the studio all the time.
Right. Well, I do anything from jingle recording, where we record advertising music, to background music for video productions, or even things that people do for fun. For instance, a man's coming in tomorrow, and he's going to record his voice on top of an album, an instrumental album, and present it to his wife for Christmas.
Oh, that's nice. That's real nice. Well, so what's in the future for Blue Planet Enterprises?
Well,
Do you have any big goals or dreams that you're going to go to
I do.
48 track in the next year or something?
No. I will probably keep the 16 track for some time. The 1-inch format is a wonderful format. It's economical, it's super high fidelity, and it's easy to use and doesn't cost a lot.
Well, that sounds great.
And my plans basically are to continue doing some music recording on the side. I'd like to increase the district attorney business that I do, the enhancement business, and I'd like to produce some albums for Jack Prewitt.
Jack, thank you very much for being our guest today on Slice of Life. Thank
Pleasure,
you.
Kim.
We hope you enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to join us again next week when our guest will be Elmer Fudd discussing capital punishment for wabbits.